Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Joe Sinclair from Quality Ag Service and Carley Wilkens, our marketing lead, attended FarmCon in Kansas City, Missouri a couple weeks ago. Hear what they learned, what's going on, and what's coming down the pipeline in the ag industry.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Ben, Carley, and a special guest, Joe Sinclair from Quality Ag Service Incorporated. And as we told you last week, we were going to feature the FarmCon meeting that was held in Kansas City, January 4th and 5th. And this FarmCon meeting is put on by Kevin Van Trump. And it's a very prestigious meeting as far as talking about what's coming and what's going on in agriculture. I did not attend it, but Carley and Joe did, so we're going to let them lead the discussion. So go ahead, Joe. Tell us a little bit about the overview of the meeting, what the purpose is, and why you like to go to it, and then we'll dig into some of the activities, or some of the speakers, I should say.
Absolutely, and I'll try to get it done quickly here so that we can get to what everybody really wants, which is the corny jokes section. But the Van Trump family puts this conference on, and it's just a wonderful meeting. Was this your first time attending, Carley?
Yes, and a lot of people that were there said, oh, I was here last year for the first time and I'm definitely coming back.
Yeah, it's an excellent meeting. It has both a broad picture, global overview of our industry and the factors outside of agriculture that impact agriculture, as well as down to the point fine-tuning with different crops, different commodities, and long-term weather outlooks, the geopolitical situation. It is a comprehensive look, a snapshot at our industry and the factors that affect it. And the Van Trumps are a family organization similar to what Quality Ag and Merschman's is, and it's just fun to be around an atmosphere of family people. It didn't feel like we were at a corporate event.
No.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed the kickoff. We had a geopolitical analysis.
Peter Zion.
Yeah. Actually, it started with prayer. The guy that used to be the chaplain for the Kansas City Chiefs is now the chaplain over all NFL chaplains, and he gave a prayer, and it was a fitting agricultural scene to have.
It set the tone.
Yeah, it set the tone. It was great. Kevin Van Trump got up there and introduced everybody, his son Jordan, and he talked about his family stuff too, how their family has changed, and he's, got an in-law now, and his daughter got off the payroll, and he's learning about wokeism from his daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell that story.
She is an architect and became
in
New York City, and his wife wanted a pool, and so she says, oh, well, I'll draw you up this, pool house and pool. And of course it came back and he showed the picture and it was like a mansion. And so that was pretty funny. And then he said, whoa, wait, and looked at her email, and in her email title, it was more than just her name and her title and her company. It was her name and her pronoun and her title and her company. And he goes, what is this?
Yeah, and then
So pronoun, what do you mean? What say exactly?
So that
hers were she, her, and she explained to him that's how she identified. So he showed his new email signature, and Kevin's a stout fella, and his new pronouns are
slim, slender.
Slim, slender. Yeah.
Because that's how he wants to be seen. Is what they said.
So it's all about clarifying which side of the fence you're on, I guess. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yep, that's what's coming, I guess. People want to know how they want to be seen. And so Kevin says, well, I can play that game. I'll be slim, slender.
Yeah. On the geopolitical side of the conversation, a couple of things that I took away, notes that I took, China is in trouble, according to one of the analysts. Xi Jinping has consolidated more power into one person than ever in history, and I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. And China's weapons are basically Russians' weapons, so two of the geopolitical analysts thought that China would not invade Taiwan because they saw how the Russian weapons systems performed in Ukraine, and Russia doesn't need anybody for their food. They can fight a war with the food that they have and feed their people. If the world boycotted China because of an invasion of Taiwan, China cannot feed itself. So
they rely on imports
they
for
relied
agriculture.
on imported food. So they didn't think that would happen. They're worried about the war in Ukraine. They think that it's imperative that the Ukraine and the West win. One fella said that if Russia's lost 100,000 soldiers, and that they would go to 500,000 before that they would quit. And if Russia wins this phase of the war, their next phase, they don't want just Ukraine, they want Poland and Lithuania and Estonia.
It was just a stepping stone for the rest of the...
Yeah. And doom and gloom, that guy said if Russia wins this war, there will be, his words not mine, a general nuclear exchange if Russia wins the war in Ukraine. So I think Europe's in for a long haul fight there, and hopefully the Ukrainians can stick that out. They thought that the USA is really well poised in agriculture because we have most everything that we need to grow food here. We have mineral resources, we have energy resources.
Transportation,
yeah. So U.S. is very well poised. Don't rely on China for anything was something that was said. Mexico is now our top trading partner. They expect that to continue, and they think that 9 to 15% inflation is here for the next several years.
What percent?
9 to 15.
9 to 15.
Wow.
Yeah, is what they said.
And they said Chinese, too, speaking demographic-wise, for Mexico and China, the Chinese didn't have children, and so their economy is already going extinct. Yeah.
The one-child policy,
Yep.
right? And then, and I know in China they didn't want girls because they wanted to carry the surname on, and so many of them, you know, many years ago, there's a lot of Chinese girls that were adopted in the United States, if you remember that time period. Mm-hmm. So they have no young people, I guess.
They have nobody to pay for their older generation, but Mexico looks like this.
Yeah, the countries that they were positive on, Jacob Shapiro, he likes Brazil and Mexico, Turkey. He thought was well poised. He wasn't quite as negative on China as one of the other analysts. And there was a new term that I heard. They said globalism is dead now. The globalization of the world is trending the other way, and the new term is a multipolar world. A multipolar world. So it's going to be the Americas, it's going to be Europe, it's going to be
more about things that you can do yourself rather than trading globally.
Yep. I thought that was an interesting set of comments from Jacob Shapiro.
Well, we're kind of finding out with the chip shortage and supply issues that we've had in so many areas that the United States is figuring out that they have to produce more of this stuff themselves rather than rely on partners.
Well, and they said too that Chinese is not a technological partner to the United States. Like, they make the low-end chips, and any kind of innovation they have is because it was stolen or replicated.
Yeah.
So.
Another thing on demographics, they thought that, and these are numbers, they're not made up. I mean, it's just, here is the population of the United States. Mm-hmm. And they said it'll be 2034 before we have equilibrium in the workforce as far as people leaving and people coming in. They said that we are going to continue to decline a workforce until 2034. So
that's why so many companies can't find employees, because of the supply of younger people aren't there. But that comes back into play in 2034. There'll be enough young people to...
In 2034, there should be equilibrium. But the year before that, I think they said I think it peaks out at 900,000 workers more will leave than enter the workforce before it gets better.
Yeah. And then on top of that too, they talked about the capital too, that I think the millennials had to get their capital built up, and it was going to be about that same time before they'd take over for the boomers for all the capital that's in the economy.
And speaking of capital, retired capital flees risk. It goes to a safer place, and a safer place is not available for investment. And they said that is going to slow the world's economy down as the population ages and people's retirement accounts transfer from stocks to safer investments like bonds, that it'll basically take capital out of investment markets. So they said long term it's going to be flat to this way for the economies of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when they show those numbers, it's hard to argue.
Because it's already people that are already what their ages are.
Well, that's 12 years from now, so
Right.
we'll make it, hopefully.
I like the weather talk. The La Nina is oscillating towards El Nino, and that should provide some relief, according to the weather analysts, to a lot of the drought areas. He did say it was going to be warmer and wetter, was what I got out of it, Carley.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if this was right or not because I was taking a lot of notes, but Eric Snodgrass said if we lose La Nina and build a weak El Nino by spring, there will be a tight planting window. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. So, good and bad.
Yeah. If you get planted, you'll be fine.
So be aggressive planning in case we have that short window, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I liked also some of the commodity-specific guys. Cotton is going to lose acres in 23. I think it was Greg Dowd that had that. That was Greg Dowd was talking about regulatory hurdles. He said that regulatory hurdles crushes more ag innovation than anything. Governments don't know how to regulate innovation. So when something gets innovated, the government, they don't want tractors driving by themselves in the field or down the road. So it's hard for governments to get their hands around concepts in innovation.
Yeah, he said tech is going to skyrocket and just improve super fast, but it's going to be the government that holds us back from implementing things if they can, because the innovation is going to come so fast that the government won't be able to keep up. So that might be a damper.
Yep.
And we're going to need that innovation if we don't have the workers. So I mean, because I know companies right now are trying to figure out how can we do more work with less employees, and that's through innovation and equipment and whatnot. So this all ties together that over the next 10 years, there's going to be a lot of investment in automation and ways to do things with less people.
Yeah, that's 100% what we got out of that.
And I think Mike Mock had a couple from CGB, I think he was from. He said a few things about the markets, and of course this was 2 weeks ago now, so it might have changed. He said the volatility is unpriced in the market right now. So, and that's kind of a theme too that we heard there, was that if everything kind of, or even some of these things happen that they're talking about, volatility is going to be extreme going through 2023 with everything. So you want to try and do some risk management with that. And
you said buy out of the money calls and sell all your old crop.
Yeah, he said be careful holding on to old crop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't say sell all your old crop.
Well, close enough.
Yeah. And he's fearful of our Brazilian competitor. The weather guy said that South American production will be up. The losses in Argentina are going to be more than made up for with the extra production from Brazil.
Mm-hmm. He said Brazil is firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, Brazil is, and Australia too. That was, we don't really think about Australia a bunch, but Australia's cattle herd is the highest that it's ever been, where ours is the lowest since we've ever counted. So it's amazing how the world, we have a drought going on in the western United States, and herds are being liquidated in the Mountain West and Texas, and the other side of the globe, Australia's having the best cattle pasture growing conditions in the history of their recorded time. Just amazing. It's a big planet.
Very true.
I was going to make a couple comments too. We don't really think about different commodities, but mining, there was a guy that talked about mining.
Oh yeah, that was interesting.
And it was so interesting how so many things, you think about an oil mine, basically it's a well, and they flare the gas off and it's gone forever. When they're making steel, there are other elements that they don't get flared off, but they don't get captured. And there's a booming industry in some of these newer elements that are a byproduct of other mining processes. And one of them was helium. I didn't know that helium was a worldwide shortage. It's used in cooling for machinery and data centers.
Isn't it used to make chips too?
Chips.
I think so, yeah.
Used to make chips.
That was, yeah.
MRI machines need it. So there's this worldwide shortage of helium. So there's technology coming into play to go into steel mills and capture the noble gases that are released when you're turning iron ore into steel. So a couple of interesting, like I said, it was an interesting meeting. There was big picture stuff that
sometimes you don't even think about. It's not even on the radar.
Yeah.
Is it typically held the first week of January then?
Yeah, I believe next year's the 3rd and 4th.
Back in Kansas City
Back in
again?
Kansas City,
Wednesday, Thursday, I think it is.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about the transportation guy, Tom Williamson. That was a neat talk too.
Yeah.
The whole infrastructure of transportation. And
yeah, he talked about, I think, the railroad. So we got an overview of the fertilizer industry, and
which was that fertilizer is a good value right now.
Yes.
Was kind of the bottom line on that. It's a good value.
Are prices coming down, Joe?
Well, your brother Henry could tell you better than me, but the trend has been lower, yes. Yeah, with the exception of nitrogen, and I think it's softening too. So, yeah, I think you get it back to our viewers that are watching here. I think now would be a good time to make sure you got your inputs locked in for 2023. And I don't know whether it's take a conservative outlook and sell out the money calls, but I would have no problem selling some new crop to cover the expenses that you have, because there's margin in there right now. There's margin built into the current equation of producing corn and soybeans.
I think it's at like $6 or just below, so that's a pretty good price for fall.
Before we get back to FarmCon, but you might mention the big picture on chemicals too, what's going on right now.
Okay, big picture on chemicals is there are no supply chain snags anymore. There's supply of practically everything. Atrazine is a little bit short. It's gone up in price, but glyphosate's come down. Glufosinate has come down. The things that have gone up are basically corn chemistries. The acetamides, you got your acetochlor and metolachlor are both up in price along with atrazine. But across the board, most other crop protection chemicals are lower values than they were last year. So it's going to be a good year.
Coming back into equilibrium, right?
Coming back into equilibrium. Nothing fixes high prices like high prices.
That's right.
Yeah, and a lot of farmers last year learned that even if you plant Roundup Ready crops, you don't necessarily need to put Roundup on them. There were a lot of Enlist E3 soybeans that it was Enlist and clethodim or Enlist and glufosinate, and guys had great results. You need to put a residual in there, like metolachlor for the residual on grass and small seed broadleafs. But yeah, we're going to have some great answers at great values this year in crop protection in general.
Good. Other key points at FarmCon.
Inbound freight into China on dry bulk containers. Iron ore is a huge component of the dry bulk freight. It's not grain. It's iron ore and coal, and the iron ore is headed to China and steel comes out. Rail freight is the only freight that the price is going up and the service is poor. That was this was a railroad guy talking about it. He said ocean freight prices going down, barge freight prices coming down, truck freight prices going down. he said rail freight is the only one that's going up, and it's the poorest service of all.
And there's no solutions for it either.
Yeah.
They literally cannot get it together
Yeah.
in the rail industry, is what he was kind of telling us,
Yeah.
I think.
They've got trouble. Long term, he was a little worried about barge freight. He said barges are starting to wear out, and it currently costs $900,000 to build a new barge, and pre-pandemic it was $500,000. So if you think about it, you got an aging barge fleet that's getting a few leaks in it. If you get a few leaks in a barge of salt, that's probably okay. But if you're shipping soybeans in the same barge down to the Gulf, our customer that receives those wet soybeans is not going to be very happy with them. So it's he was a little bit worried about that, and I was interested in how much those ships can hold. There's two types of vessels. A Panamax vessel, which is one that can get through the Panama Canal, was 55,000 tons, is what those can hold. And the other ones are north of 100,000 tons. That they call them
Cape size.
Cape size. They got to go around the Cape of.
Because they can't go through the canal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, at the Panama Canal, they kept the old one open, but they have the new one open now too. So that does allow bigger ships to go through in the Panama Canal.
Yeah, they call them Panamax vessels, and they'll basically they're 55,000 ton.
Because the old Panama Canal is, I've been to the Keokuk Lock, and it's basically about the same size as the Keokuk Lock, except it's, instead of being like 20 foot deep, it's like 40, 60 foot deep, for the draw that these ships take.
There was a great conversation on biologicals. One of the comments that I heard that I thought was interesting was that someday farmers will be able to name soil microbes the same as they can name the chemicals that they use.
That was a big takeaway. It was like, wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah, so there's progress being made in soil health and soil biology. And I think what we're doing with Pattern Ag with our DNA soil sampling is going to help us to identify better which our healthier soils are. Yeah.
There's more of a focus going into soil now, more so than just the crop.
Yep.
Yeah, it's more than NPK and sulfur now. So we got to understand that how everything interacts in that soil, and the biologicals is a new frontier for understanding how they interact, release phosphate and retain nitrogen. We've talked about this before, and there's just so many products out there. I think farmers are saying, well, they understand that this is important, but they're not quite sure which way to go yet.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has the silver bullet answer for every acre yet. Yeah. I took 6 pages of notes. Carbon sequestration was a topic, and it's very much tied into the ethanol industry. The carbon sequestration, it's going to be kind of a linchpin for the ethanol industry to try to have that be part of their product that they use to make money. And one fella said that going forward, there's going to need to be an honest discussion between corn being food or fuel. And it's a conversation that may not be coming in the next few years, but he said it's a conversation that will be had when there are some grain shortages.
And I think it goes back to that multipolar versus globalization too. It was shocking to hear that, but they also talked about renewable fuels or the renewable diesel, I think, for the aviation, and how that big oil and farmer, everybody's on board. Nobody's against each other, and everybody's all in one direction moving forward. And
there's definitely going to be a shortage of vegetable oils for
when that happens. Yeah.
Yep. That was
plenty of meal.
Yep.
And the same way with the ethanol. We're only using the starch component. We still have the protein component with the DDGs, which goes to many, particularly cattle production. But I think there are some misunderstandings exactly how the ethanol industry fits in because it used to be the farmers fed their corn directly to the cattle. Now they take it to the ethanol plant and buy the DDGs, which is more concentrated and get a better rate of gain and stuff. So we're really still putting it into food, but on the perception though is that when you go to take corn to ethanol, there's nothing left but ethanol, and that's not exactly true.
Yeah. And it's going to be kind of hard for Carley and I to summarize 2 days of excellent meetings into this great cup of Joe, but Mary Shellman, the Harvard staffer, she had a term that I had never heard, eco-anxiety.
Yes.
I did not know what eco-anxiety was until the Harvard staffer told me that. And 70% of 17 to 25-year-olds expressed in a survey that they have eco-anxiety. 25% of that sample don't want to have kids because they think it's going to be hard on the planet.
They're that
uptight.
Yeah. Yes.
So
yes.
We might be in a little bit of a cocoon because we know how important it is to reproduce our crops, whether it's a plant crop or an animal crop, and then you have young people have eco-anxiety and they don't want to have kids because they're worried it's going to hurt the planet that they're occupying. So just stuff for us to consider in agriculture.
Well, some experts are saying in 2050 is when the world population is going to peak, and then we're going to start declining in population. They talk anything about that? And then they're saying that, well, then all of a sudden the farmers are going to have to deal, our entire careers is always produce more. At that point, we're going to have to start producing less, and we don't know how to do that. I mean, some of the marginal land will come out of production, some of the experts say, because it won't produce enough. So, I mean, it is really hard to predict the future is what I say, because normally it's things can change so fast. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned in working at Merschman Seeds over the years, if you don't like change, get the heck out of agriculture. I mean, you just better get out, because things change from one year to the next, and nothing is static. It is constantly changing. And the low-cost producer, at the end of the day, is going to win. And I agree with everything you said about the United States having all these pieces in place, not relying on anybody to be able to do energy, transportation, the genetics and all the things that we got going on. So, I always say American agriculture, I mean, we're the low-cost producer, so we're going to be the survivor and we're going to be the winner.
Yeah, and globally, I think it'll be us and Brazil in agriculture, but Brazil lacks the energy resource that we're blessed with. And they have no mineral resources there either. They've got to import all their P and K, so.
And that boils down to government too. What type of government, like you had said, the fastest way to grow business is to have less regulation, and that was preached in the last administration. Get rid of regulation. We can be more productive. We can get things done. And as far as regulations go, it took us 20 years from concept to getting Enlist E3 to the market, and it was all had to do with the approval process, not only in the United States but all over the world. So I mean, you're right. It's going to stifle how fast we could go if we just had a little bit more grease on those skids, right?
Something good for our livestock producers. One of the speakers talked about a new group of consumer. They used to be vegetarians, and now they're calling themselves flexotarians, flexotarian omnivores. So they've done away with the vegetarian, vegan lifestyle, and they're treating themselves to a little bit of animal protein here and there.
Yes.
Yeah, flexotarians.
Yes. And they had, Mary Shellman also talked about like the 4 big things that were coming, and it was kind of some of that too, where I would say an overall trend of the conference, people were saying do more with less, ag tech and all of that. And she said the same thing, where your data is going to be a big deal for farmers. Right now it's kind of, it helps me see my yields and see what I need for changes, but it's going to be much more than that coming down the pipeline. And then she was saying that there are DeFi markets, which is basically, those are people who want to change the way people eat. So like the Impossible Burger. And there's disruptor markets, which I didn't know about, but apparently they're making ice cream without using animals now, with making it's milk but not dairy. And I know the dairy industry has that, we shouldn't call it milk if it doesn't come from a cow, going on right now, but that's something else that they were talking about. But apparently there's ice cream that they can make that doesn't use dairy products from animals. And then she said, think about how that affects, like if you really think about that, think about how if you take animals out of the food chain system, what does that do to the economy? Whoa, that was another big...
They did say cell-based meat was a long ways away. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The interesting thing about that Impossible Burger, we attended a meeting here in our office that, the synthetic man-made meat, not growing the cells, but just
made it out of vegetables.
Yeah. They put up 2 dog food labels, and they put the meat, manufactured meat label up, and they said, okay, which one's the meat label? The one the humans eat. And we couldn't pick it out. Pick it out.
Well, and those companies are failing. They're just Impossible and Beyond Meat. They're not doing well. Consumers are not fond of them. So I think it's a good time to be growing hogs and cattle.
Yeah.
Like I always say about pork. I said if there's not pig on the plate, it's not breakfast. So. Kevin Van Trump talked a little bit about business, and he said businesses need to spend a third of their time on recruiting. I thought that was an interesting concept as a businessman. He's wildly bullish on land, even in this high, time. I'm old enough, I've seen some cycles, and it feels like toppy right now. It feels toppy. I've seen some tops before, but I've seen some bottoms before, and it's a cycle. It'll be so good that you can not remember when it was bad, and then it'll be so bad you don't think it'll ever be good again, and it'll cycle back.
Yeah, the 80s were tough, but beyond that in my career, everything was pretty positive. But yeah, there was a decade of high interest rates and just in general. Something we relate to the younger folks is to remind them that it can get bad, but right now things look positive for this year for agriculture, like as you said.
I'll let you keep on going there, Carley. I was going to finish with the talk about Granger Smith when I wrap up my FarmCon comments.
Overall, it was a very good conference with things that I wouldn't have even thought about or talked about. And I liked the format too, where they had panels. It wasn't just speakers. And if there were speakers, like you were saying, Granger Smith, it was an actual speaker, but more so it was a discussion. And I liked the format of the discussion based over, I feel like you could let more people's opinions, more people could talk anyway.
And you could have more than one opinion on the same panel.
Yes.
And there might be a little bit of, I don't know if that guy's right, I think I'm right, but it was encouraged to have an open mind and be able to process both sides of an argument.
Yeah, and I don't think that happens enough in our world, just in general, where people say, well, this is what I think, but I don't necessarily agree with you, but this is just what I think. And that was refreshing, you could say.
Yeah. I want everybody to see that, my notes that I took are handwritten, and
I wrote mine and I typed them up.
Look at the show everybody what a nice tidy job you did.
Oh, geez.
But it was a great conference. My last comment on it would be one of the most powerful speakers that I've ever heard was Granger Smith. He's a country performing artist, country music, and he quoted from the book of Matthew to start his talk. His 2-year-old died in his arms a few years ago in a swimming pool accident, and it just brought everything back together about our industry, what we're doing here on this planet. And I thought that it was a great speaker at a great conference.
He really went after what is your priority? What are your priorities? And what you say and what you do sometimes don't always match up, but people notice what you do for your priority. So one of the things he talked about was, he started off saying that he was saying, well, family is number one priority, and then my job, and then God. And he goes, wait a minute. I need to recheck that. That doesn't sound right. Well, there's guns in there somewhere. And he was like, I don't know, maybe they, so he went around rearranging his priorities. And then he goes, didn't that sound weird when I didn't have God as number one? And he goes, we always say God first, love of my country and my family and work and all those things, you can take your own order. But he goes, if you're really going to place something in the number one spot, if it's God for you or something else, he goes, we all just need to be honest about it. So, and you should be able to see how you live that out. So if God is your number one priority, then people should see the change in you, that is your number one priority, and they can tell, yep, there's no questions about that. That's his priority.
Guy is,
yeah.
And when he was summarizing his talk, I quoted this, put quotations around, so he said this, he goes, I'm just one beggar telling another beggar where I found food.
Mm-hmm.
So. It
was such a powerful speech, and I went over to you after that, and I said, you had me crying. Mm-hmm. So it was very powerful.
The Van Trumps put a great conference on, and I would recommend it to anybody to check it out, farmcon.com. It'll probably sell out again next year, but it's an excellent opportunity to network with interesting minds in agriculture.
And Kevin says it's the people that make the conference. So he goes, I don't do anything up here. It's the people that make the conference. Well, I'd have to argue about that too.
Yeah,
but
they did a nice job.
Yeah, they did a great job.
Yeah.
Well, good. We appreciate the insight because, there's always a lot of anxiety in farming too. What's the weather going to do? What's the price going to do? Am I going to get my stuff planted or get my weeds killed? I mean, it's just constant anxiety, and then to get a little comfort in, we're going to be okay. We're going to make it. We appreciate the insight. So that brings us, Joe, to your favorite part of the.
Yeah, and we finally got done with FarmCon talk, so we can get the corny jokes.
All right. Well, you said Kevin Van Trump. I have not met him, but you said he's kind of a stout guy, so it just ties in perfectly with what I'm going to cover today. And I'm not a small guy either, so, and everybody, it seems like after the first year, they make these New Year's resolutions, and a lot of us are saying, we need to get healthier, lose a little weight and this stuff. And so anyhow, I just wanted to tell you, the other day I paid $100 for a belt that doesn't fit. What a huge waste. Okay. And I have a Fitbit, and again, trying to lose a little weight, trying to be healthier, I discovered a shortcut. I found out if you put the Fitbit in the dryer when you first get up, you can get a head start on your steps. You're supposed to get 10,000 steps in a day. Well, I had 3,800 steps in before I even put my pants on. Anyhow, the last one is logic. Okay, we always try to justify anything we do. We got to have logic to justify it. Okay, a whale swims all day, only consumes fish and water, and is fat. Whale blubber. A rabbit only eats vegetables, runs and hops all day long, and only lives about 5 years. Meanwhile, a tortoise doesn't run, does nothing energetic, yet some of them can live to 450 years. And my doctor tells me to eat well and exercise. Well, I don't think so. I got one more. I've actually saved the best one to last. What do you call someone who can't stick to a diet? What do you call someone who can't stick with their diet? A deserter. Okay. Joe's got to get out of here real fast, I think, after those. But anyhow, Joe, we really appreciate you coming in, and Carley, we appreciate your notes and taking the lead for our company to go down and find out new things. And we were doing that same time you were down there, we were doing our crop fair with Iowa State University, and we had our big meeting in Des Moines with the Land Expo. So a lot of information. Like I say, looks like January is the month of meetings. But appreciate everyone, and as always, we hope that you and your family are safe and healthy, and we'll see you next week. Take care.